Hi there, I'm Tom. Welcome back to Tom's Grinder Lab. This little presentation, I like to think could potentially be the most important video on espresso that I've ever put together. It's the 6 critical contributors to making great espresso, and that's not good espresso. This is great espresso, which is a little bit more complicated than okay espresso. Think of it as a helicopter view of what it takes to enjoy a great espresso. Now, these 6 critical contributors are presented in a sequential order. And what I mean by that is that if you get the first one right, think of them like 6 ducks and you've got to get in a row, or 6 check boxes, if you like. You get the first one right, you get the first check box ticked, then it gives potential for you to get the second one right. And if you get the second one right, it gives you potential to get the third one right, and so on. And that's what I mean by sequential order. We're going to start with what would arguably be the most important of the critical contributors, and then we'll go on. But they don't think for a moment that you can get away with just getting 5 of these right and have a great espresso, because you can't. It's just that the potential to get something really spot on is only afforded when you get the preceding critical contributor correct. And this will make a lot more sense as we go through it. So let's do that. Let's go through it. The first critical contributor is the bean, which is actually a seed, but let's not go into that. This is the easiest and fastest way to improve your espresso. And I can give you the top tip, if you like, for the month. It's before you buy a new espresso machine, before you buy one of the shiny new grinders that I've recommended, make a point of seeing if you can get a better bean, because that's going to deliver you a better espresso. You cannot get something out of a bean that's not in there. If it's not on the bean, it's not going to be in your cup. So before you try a new grinder or espresso machine, try a new bean and just explore a bit and see if there's something you can get, because this is the easiest, this is the fastest way to get espresso in the cup a whole lot better. If it's not on the bean, can't get it in the cup. Think of it like this, that there's only really 2 ingredients in a cup of espresso. One is what's come out of the bean and the other is water. So this kind of underscores how important the bean is as a component. To give you a couple of tips, the idea is I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with each of these 6 components, because this is like the helicopter view. It's like the strategic perspective on making great espresso. So just a few pointers on the way through for this one to put a kind of a little bit of flesh on the bones, help you get some value from this presentation in terms of practically implementable ideas. So here's a couple of tips. So first of all, make sure you buy from a reseller who offers transparency. Bottom line is this: the more details that a reseller, whether it's green beans or roasted beans, offers you on the bag, then the more likely it is that they care about quality. You should be able to find out from a bag of beans, green or roasted, which country they came from. You should be able to find out which region of that country they came from. Ideally, which farm of the region they come from. The meters above sea level is really important. The higher the meters above sea level, then the more suited that bean, in my experience, in my taste buds at least, is going to be suited to the lighter roast or filter style coffees. So meters above sea level is important. The variety of the bean, the process method. I prefer washed beans, a washed process method. You can get natural beans, bit hit and miss, double anaerobic, which I really like also for filter. But whether you understand these terms or not at this stage, we can explore all that a little bit later. But that process method should be disclosed. That should be a part of the transparency that your green bean reseller or your coffee roaster is offering you. Now, if you're buying green beans, you should also be able to get the cupping score, which is a professional, normally a small group of people who have rated the bean in terms of how great they think the bean is. Cupping score. Harvest date is very rarely disclosed, and it's one of my pet peeves. It's part of my mission in life to get the harvest date of the beans. The beans were harvested 5 years ago. They're going to have lost a lot of their vitality versus if they were harvested 5 months ago. So single origin is often better quality, but ask. There might be a reason why they are blending beans. So single origin simply means it came from the same farm. It's the one bean from the same farm. It hasn't been blended with any other variety of beans from the same farm or another farm. Single origin is, as I said, often an indicator of top quality, but not necessarily always. Sometimes people are blending beans to affect the flavor in the cup. A little bit of a pointer if you're starting out and buying green beans and you want to roast for a medium style espresso or medium plus, medium dark, etc. Start with a Kenyan AA. They're a bean which is think, the only country in the world where the government gets involved in grading of the beans. So if you get a bean that's graded Kenyan AA, they're going to be all of extremely similar size. They're going to roast you're going to be able to get a very balanced roast, not have the smaller and the larger beans in the same barrel. And if you're looking for lighter roasts or filter, get beans that have come from a higher altitude. This chart here is sent to me when I'm buying beans from the supplier, and Stan puts this together. You can find Stan on Instagram.com/coffee_bean coffee, _ co_co-op. So coffee bean co-op. So Stan provides me with, when I buy green beans, the name of the coffee, the region it comes from, the farm it comes from, meters above sea level, the variety, the process, the cup profile, the notes. I have all the information I need, including the cupping score, to make an informed decision about the sort of beans that I want to be buying from Stan. So check it out if you're in Australia, or you can get shipping inexpensively from Australia. It would be worth you checking out Stan's Instagram page and making contact with him through that. I do also buy roasted beans for my filter coffee because I'm not really that good at roasting filtered beans, I don't think. So I get those from another place that offers a lot of transparency, which is monastery.coffee. And this is a label off one of their bags. You can see it's got the name of the bean, tasting notes, country of origin, the region it came from, the style, processing. It was, in this case, it's natural, which is something I prefer, meters above sea level, and the variety. So all that nice transparent information. Again, if you're in Australia, monastery.coffee, go and check them out, because they're absolutely my go-to place for any filter beans. And I don't need to buy from Seattle or Colorado or Norway, because I get the quality of beans that I really enjoy for filter coffee from monastery.coffee. So let me introduce you to the second critical contributor, which is the barrel. The bean, the barrel, and this is the roasting process, because most roasters are in the shape of a barrel and it starts with B. I've gone with the barrel. So a couple of little tips. If you are buying roasted beans already, have a look in the bag. You're looking for an evenness of color. If you've got an even roast, then the color of the beans will be even. If you've got some beans that are very light and some beans are very dark, then they've done something a bit weird in the roasting process, or they've blended beans together. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be just to cover up for poor quality. If you're buying single origin roasted beans, then the beans should be a similar size in the bag. Otherwise, it's less likely that they're actually from the same farm and from the same lot. You want to, again, buy from a roaster just as if you were buying green beans. You want to buy from a roaster that has lots of transparency, so you know what the roast date was at the very least. If you don't know what the roast date is, if it's not on the bag, don't buy the bean. So we've done the bean, we've done the barrel. Now it's time for the burr. If you get the right bean and you've got it roasted right, then this is where the potential of the burr comes into play. If you've got a poor quality bean or a poor quality roast, then it doesn't matter which burr set you use. In fact, I'd just go a bit further. I'd say if you've got a very dark roast, or you enjoy really hot coffee, the burr is far less important. But if you're wanting to get into the medium light espresso with lots of nutty flavors coming out, or a light espresso with more fruit notes coming out, or filter coffee, then the burrs suddenly become very important, assuming you've got the bean and the barrel sorted out. Now, these days, almost all burrs are good burrs. Good for something. Good for darker roast, good for medium roast, good for lighter roast, but they're good for something. I have literally had one burr set out of over 50 burr sets that I have tested and logged and compared in the last 3 years that I would say that is a very, very poor quality burr set. And it's a burr set which is a little obscure. You really have to go to the country of origin and order it especially. It's super cheap. And every single burr set I've had from a mainstream reseller or a retailer, they've been good burrs, good for something. Now, burrs can generally be split into two different categories, and I'm not talking about conical or light, I'm talking about traditional or modern. So when I talk about two main sort of burrs, I'm talking about traditional burrs versus modern burrs. So traditional burrs tend to give you, they're good for a medium roast, even medium light roast, or a dark roast. They're absolutely fine for all of those. And they're going to give you something which is inoffensive and enjoyable. You'll find burrs like that on the Niche Zero, the Niche Duo, the DF series of grinders. The more modern burrs are the full range of SSP burrs, or what I'd call more modern burrs, and very often they're designed to bring, for lighter roasts, for medium light roast, to bring out a bit more acidity, some of the origin flavor notes. They're not really designed to be used with beans that have been roasted to medium or darker. The darker you roast the beans, the less important the burrs are. because when you roast beans dark, you're going to get more roast flavors coming through and less of the bean's origins. In regard to conical versus flat, I really don't care. I don't really care for espresso. It's a 38 mil burr or an 83 mil burr. It's more about the burr geometry when it comes to espresso. If you're having dark roast coffee, the burr matters less, but it also matters less if you're having really hot coffee, because it's hard to taste flavor notes with something that's piping hot. So if you combine those two things, if you're having a dark roasted bean and you enjoy your coffee really hot, then the burrs are probably not actually important at all, and you'd be fine with a budget grinder. And my plea to everyone who buys a new grinder is to try the stock burrs first. If you don't like the stock burrs, then sure, get an aftermarket burr like an SSP, but some of the stock burrs are really exceptional. For example, the DF64 Gen 2, the steel burrs, not the coated burrs, really do an exceptional job of the full range of roast depths, from light through to dark roasted. So, and I see a lot of people buying grinders and fitting them immediately, not even trying the stock burrs, fitting them immediately with a very expensive burr, when in fact the stock burr might be something they actually prefer. I also recommend that you have dedicated burrs for espresso and another one for filter. At least one burr for espresso, at least one burr for filter. Even if your filter is a hand grinder, wonderful grinders like the M modal burr, or the 1Z Presso, the K Ultra burr. These are terrific burrs. Comandante C40, C60. These are terrific burrs. So you can just have a little hand grinder for your filter espresso, and you have an electric grinder for your espresso. But I do recommend that you have separate burrs for each one. I have yet to find a hybrid burr that excels at both espresso and filter. So let's have a look at critical contributor number 4, which is where you step into the picture. This is the barista. And top of the pops for me, and I'm going to dive more into detail into this, how you prepare the espresso puck. But for now, just know that the vice distribution technique is critically important. And this is where you'd use a Moonraker or an Autocomb, or you'd use an RO distribution tool, a puck rake. I don't really mind if you even use acupuncture needles or a toothpick, but you distribute the grounds in the basket evenly. And I don't care who tells you that you don't need to do this. If you do this, you'll have more consistent, balanced espresso pouring into your cup. But I'll unpack more of this in one of the later parts. Even tamping, top tip, get yourself a self-leveling tamper. You can Google that. Start with a ratio of grams in and out of 1. So this is where you need to weigh your beans. But as I said, we'll unpack all of this in the later series. Weigh your greens. So let's say 18 grams in, 36 grams in the cup. So you need a scale for that. And you want that pour in 25 to 30 seconds. That's your benchmark. From there, you can experience turbo shots where you have a much faster shot, or a ristretto where you have a much slower shot. But once you get your coffee in the cup and you're experiencing that and you're thinking that's a nice, well-balanced flavor, then you can experiment from there. But that would be a good benchmark to start with. As I said, just a few top tips. You really want to be able to play eventually with pre-infusion pressure and duration. Unpacking more of that later on. Temperature is an important factor. Puck height is an important factor, particularly if you're looking for a fuller bodied leather style espresso, and of course water quality. And all of these things are things that you can learn and develop, and it'll become second nature to you once you dial them in, so to speak, pardon the pun. Number 5 is the brewer. So this is your espresso machine or whatever device you're using to extract the liquids from the coffee bean. And just a couple of real tips, things that I look for is I want to be able to play with the pre-infusion. So the pre-infusion pressure, variation, and duration, I want to be able to play with that. Whatever espresso machine I have, that's going to be an important factor for me. I want temperature and pressure profiling ability. I would like to be able to play with that, even if it's just a flow control lever that we can use on an E61 group head like a Synchronica or something like that. The big thing I'm looking for in my daily driver espresso machine is accurate and stable temperature and pressure. In particular, I want stability of temperature. When the machine comes up to temperature, whether that's in 5 minutes or 40 minutes, I want it to stay there. So let's have a look at the 6th critical contributor, which is, obviously that starts with a B, is your brain. And this recognizes that your brain is as individual as your fingerprints or your eyeball print. It refers to your uniqueness. You have flavor preferences. You have different taste buds. You have experience and skill set that other people might not have. And you have, yes, a big unconscious bias. So the things that you like in the cup may not be the same thing that I like in the cup. You might prefer a darker roasted bean than me. So this is one of the critical contributors, because at the end of the day, you are the final arbiter of what you like and what you don't like. So that's it. They are the 6 critical contributors to making and enjoying a great espresso. But just remember, if you don't get the bean right, nothing else is going to matter. If you don't get the roast right, nothing else is going to matter. But they are all important. You can get a great bean, the great barrel, the great roast, the great burr, but you mess up the WDT, you're going to have sour and bitter flavors in the cup, and it's going to be a sinker. So they're all very, very important. They all come together, like, as I said, 6 ducks in a row or 6 checklists. And if there's something wrong about your espresso, then it'll be because one of these ducks is not in a row. So let's have a look at where we are in the series. Making Great Espresso. Last part 1, we looked at 3 common mistakes. This one, we looked at the 6 critical contributors. Next part, we're going to have a look at foundation. So this is things like puck preparation and so on. Then we're going to go into intermediate skills and techniques, advanced skills and techniques. And part 6, I don't know, that's going to be up to you. Whatever questions that I get asked frequently, FAQs is. And as always, get over to Tom's Grinder Lab and download my free espresso optimization guide, which goes into a whole lot more detail than I could ever go into in a video. And make sure you subscribe. And if you've got value from this, think about sharing it with a friend as well. The subscribing, by the way, is the way I get paid. It's the way I stay motivated. There's a lot of work goes into these videos. So if you've got value, please do subscribe. I'd appreciate that. All the best, and look forward to seeing you again in part 3.